Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and it's a huge honor that we are beginning this small panel where everybody is ready to have a thought on the most burning topic which everybody is going through. And reskilling, upskilling is something which the young workforce is looking at. So I think we should begin with Sachin Kapoor. LinkedIn is one of the most biggest company, and everybody wants to know as to how the hiring is taking place and what is the gap that we are facing right now as compared to the kind of education that is offered to the youngsters and when they are ready to face the industry. So my first question is as to how are we dealing with this change in the pattern of education as compared to the kind of requirement we have in the industry?
Yeah, first and foremost, thanks for having me here. It's a privilege to be here among all of you. And a very pertinent question to start off with. Exactly, it's like, what about the 7 million odd students who are passing out from colleges and universities, and what's changing in the employment scenario? See, the first part about employment scenario is more and more organizations are hiring for skills than they're hiring for the academic qualifications. And that's really like a top-line statement. I personally see this transition happening in terms of the difference between supply and demand. Like, there is a lot of supply for a lot of generic roles, right? Especially generic IT services roles in the engineering segment, if you can pick up, right? And therefore it becomes important that how do you fit them? Every organization wants to recruit the best talent, but they also want to recruit from a limited pool which is above a certain bar. That helps them get more effective with their hiring process. But more important, they also reduce the time to hire, which helps them a lot. And that's really manifests in terms of different screening ways. The one that I see picking up the most is assessments. And like, assessments can be functional assessments, can be generic assessments, depending on the volume you are hiring and the kind of skills that you are hiring. That change primarily means is irrespective of your academic qualification, there is a layer and the bar is different with respect to what the universities and colleges are preparing you for as compared to where the organizations expect you to be at when you are entering the professional workforce.
Do you agree, Namita? Do you think?
Yeah, no, I think absolutely. To Sachin's point, what we are also hearing from all our clients globally as well as in India is the whole piece around the skill gap being very, very evident. Mm-hmm. And I think I resonate with what Sachin mentioned in terms of saying companies want to hire, but they hire from a very, very limited pool. They may say that they're very open to everybody out there, but they themselves will talk about how lack of employability. So I think one is definitely assessments, and at Mercer, personally we feel, we hear a lot from our clients in terms of how do you help that inflow, and of course on an ongoing basis, which we'll talk through. But another thing is going back to the source as well, looking at schools, colleges, ITIs, in manufacturing streams, etc., and really working at that grassroots level, literally, to build capability such that 2 years, 3 years down the line, when their course actually finishes, the students coming out of there are much more able to fulfill the requirements of the job. The learning curve is much shorter than what it is right now. So I think that's another piece that across industries that we are hearing that clients across and organizations across are working on, and that's something that's leading them to great results. I think one thing that they are obviously talking about, and I'm sure we'll talk about, really assessing what's, how much needle movement's really happening. But yeah, while that's a struggle, but I think more and more organizations across industries, and we see that in manufacturing, engineering, so-called your traditional organizations as much as in tech, about companies going back and saying, let's sort of adopt these colleges and universities and institutes, and so that I know this is my captive ground. So the 1,000 of engineers or ITIs, etc., who are coming out are fit for purpose to the maximum extent possible. So that's another thing that we see in the market.
Right. Stephen, do you think that we need a mindset change? Do you think the youngsters should be changing the way they are looking at education and be better prepared to face the industry?
Yeah, so I think that where mindset's concerned, I think especially for companies like Zomato, that's everything for us. Within an industry like ours that's evolving and we're busy developing as we go, often the skill set that you enter our company with is not really very relevant in 6 months. So, I mean, even from my perspective, I've had 3 roles within 3 years at Zomato, and I've had to change that and learn while I'm busy doing that. So moving from business roles to people-focused roles, and that can happen even in specialist roles. Today you could be working on technology X, building this product, and overnight the industry changes and we have to build something new and we have to respond to that. So mindset is really everything, and having some sort of growth mindset where you feel that who you are today doesn't necessarily mean who you are tomorrow, being very comfortable with change, realizing that your education and the time that you spend there is just your foot in the door. But if you don't have a good attitude, if you don't have a good culture, or you don't have a propensity to self-develop, it's not going to last you very long. So I think that mindset really is everything, and carrying some sort of entitlement from the schooling that you went to or the education that you have isn't going to get you very far. So I think mindset does definitely have to change.
And do you think that it is more in India as compared to other countries? Do you see any change? Is there any kind of...
No, so I think that we're seeing a global change in terms of what schooling actually means, what education actually means. I think that you see things like gig economy, how people want to work today, how fast you can have access to information. You know, spending 6 or 7 years on a degree today might be time really badly spent in the future when you can actually get a lot more information a lot faster. You can learn through different mediums at the moment. So I think that globally we're seeing this change. I think that India is in a really good position to adopt the latest best thing, to move very quickly and not be stuck in very traditional structures if they act quickly. But I'm seeing that India is a great place for disruption at the moment, and a lot of it's really happening quite quickly. So it's a very exciting space to be in. I've been pleasantly surprised with how smart individuals you get to work with every single day are, and how responsive they are to changing environments. So it's really, really great.
So Sachin, would you agree, because you've been handling Asia Pacific and Japanese market as well? So do you think that we are more open to mindset change and we are more adaptive to disruption? Are we?
Like a mother loves all kids equally, I love all my markets equally. But
you love India more.
Well, I love all markets equally. In terms of culture, I feel that it has a lot to do with culture, and culture manifests itself across different realms, if you so may speak. To Stephen's point, that's true, because it depends on how developed the economy is, what is the traditional culture base, and then also what is the culture of the organization. What Stephen talks about, that he works with really smart people. I'm sure Zomato would have invested a lot in hiring and figuring out who the really smart people also are. But if I really look at it, and I look at developing economies broadly in APAC or global, you will typically find that there's a higher struggle to succeed, which fundamentally means that you will find people who are scrappier as compared to some of the other cultures and environments, and they know how to hustle. You will find people being able to multitask and do 2, 3, 4 things at the same point of time, and being able to do things with very less resources. Like the colloquial Indian word, and it's not even colloquial, like it's the often used North Indian word of jugaad. Which resonates so closely being scrappy, right? Use less resources to do more. It has its advantages, but it's a short-term path according to me. When you reference Japan, right? If I look at Japan, or if I look at US, for example, there is a lot more clarity in terms of young job seekers as to what they want to do in their career, what they really want to do, what they're good at. And that means, A, there is long-term thinking. B, they know exactly the resources they need to succeed, as compared to a mindset which says, let's start, we have a few resources, if we succeed, more resources will come. That, I'll say both of them have their application in the right instances. When we are thinking about scaling fast, surely being scrappy and ability to hustle works a lot.
I think that you have that luxury of saying, hey, I mean, even if I want to be a barista, I can earn a meaningful living, live in a great home, have these things, you can do that. I think that in developing markets, that's not always true, and you might not be able to earn a meaningful income just doing that or knowing one thing. So you actually have to diversify your knowledge quite a lot and do multiple things. You know, and I've worked in a few things, a few countries. I've worked in Europe. I've worked in South Africa as well as Hong Kong and here, and I see that actually the environment that you're in actually will breed the type of person that you tend to be. Yeah, it does definitely play a role.
Yeah.
No, I think just you know, as a supplementary point, you know, especially in engineering and design, you know, where we tend to have a lot of Indian design centers, engineering centers flourishing in India and growing by the day and month. One of the, and of course we have them on site within India, and you obviously send to project sites. One of the common themes that comes out is Indians amongst the entire lot of people who sit in engineering projects or sort of are functioning are the most flexible, of course most diligent and hardworking, and therefore more adaptable to any environment that they're sent in. And I think that's a great, you know, a credence to how we operate as, and again, it goes culturally as well. We're keen to do more. We've got that culture of saying, okay, if you've given me an opportunity, I will try and succeed as much as possible, because that's also what our parents have taught us, right? At least to the extent possible, that given an opportunity, you leverage on that. Of course, the millennials, which are said to be the most common, you know, the first generation amongst everybody who have the common set of traits across the world, do tend to think of it differently. And I think that's where some of the pieces in terms of how the organization can support that mindset change of saying, great, we're giving you a whole lot of work. Great, we'll give you a great learning environment and, you know, vibrant and all of that. But it's equally important to hear from you as to what you bring to the table.
Right.
So I think it's that, you know, expectation that there is something, you know, of a give and take between the organization and the employee in whatever shape and form, whether it's a gig worker or a regular employee. And that also.
Just building on that, you know, one of the shifts that we've seen, particularly in the last decade, is this whole concept of just-in-time hiring. You know, I think neither the organization is looking at that we're going to recruit you, you're going to have a 30-year career with us, and therefore we are going to invest 1 or 2 years in, you know, foundational level skills. Today, because it's project-specific or initiative-specific hiring, the expectation is you're going to come into the job, you know, land on your feet and, you know, start contributing. So the whole concept of day one job ready. What does that mean from an, you know, aspirant's point of view in terms of, you know, being ready?
Yeah.
Is just the formal education going to be enough, or are there gaps that they need to work on?
No, so certainly there are gaps that need to be addressed. And the point is that unfortunately our education system, and if I talk about India specifically, still continues to focus on solving the problem for you rather than giving you the tools to solve the problem. I mean, I go back to what, you know, somebody told me some time back, saying I'd much rather, you know, or rather we should encourage a culture where you're taught how to solve the problem rather than be spoon-fed. So I think there is still some way to go. And in that, I think that's where the gap also in terms of how quickly am I ready on day one tends to happen. And, you know, to my earlier point, that's where organizations are trying to bridge that gap of saying the education system is doing what it can. And of course, there's a lot of work, but do I focus on that long, arduous battle for which I perhaps don't want to spend that much time and effort on, but focus perhaps on something which is more required by me and try and solve for that. So absolutely, I think, but one point I'd definitely like to call out and is about, yes, while this just in time, and organizations as much as employees are cognizant that they're not going to spend their careers in this company. You know, while there are still some companies left where people pretty much spend their careers. But if you look at those organizations as a model, why people are able to spend their careers is because every couple of years, you know, it's a much larger group of organizations within a larger umbrella. And again, it goes back to saying, what do I stand for as an organization, and what is it that I can offer to my employees? And even if you don't stay with me for 3 years, I think organizations are coming back and saying, I want you to be great ambassadors so that tomorrow you are a potential ambassador for me to other candidates that I want to sort of be made available. So that's again, in terms of thought process as to not just for today, but I still carve out for the future, knowing that, maybe, with the attrition rate being on an average about 15% per annum, I know I will have a new organization in 3 or 4 years, but there will be certain people who will stay with me. There will be a lot of people I want to continue as my brand ambassadors in various shape and form.